Hello, this is Angelica Yingst, and you're listening to Centered, grounded conversations about the metaphysical. It's been a while, friends. It's Angelica Yingst, and I'm here with Centered for 2022. Wow. 2021 was a lot. I went through a lot of stuff, and I'm happy to be coming to you with a new commitment to this podcast. I thought I would start out with some offerings that I do for my followers, which is tarot and earth medicine reading for each month. So I'll be putting those recordings on the podcast. So if you're a podcast follower, you can have this little tidbit. I tap into astrology. I use a lot of Channing Nicholas's insights and kind of weave them into the medicine that I'm seeing in terms of earth medicine. And I pick a tarot card every month to talk about. So we're working with a tarot card, a animal guide, a plant medicine guide, and then 3 crystals. Now, when I talk about these earth medicine allies, I talk about them in terms of like helping to support you during this month. So you kind of tap into it. I used to do these on YouTube and on Facebook, and it got a little messy in there. So I decided to just do recordings. I record them on SoundCloud for my clients and my membership, people who join my membership group. So, you are also welcome to check that out at themoonandstone.com. The page is themoonandstone.com/memberships, I believe, or angieyingst.com/memberships to find out more. But basically, I have a tiered membership where you can have a reading. It's a group reading, kind of a universal reading for the medicine of the new moon, the full moon, and the month. So the months are free. I offer them on here. And then there's a little fee depending on what you are subscribing to. I also do a shamanic journey every month. A lot of people love to do that. And I send you a guided shamanic journey with a certain animal ally. So I hope you enjoy this monthly reading. And I look forward to seeing a lot more of you or hearing a lot more of me in 2022. Happy New Year, blessed 2022, and happy January. We're going to go into the astrology of 2022 and January 2022. So I'm not going to go through everything that's going to happen in 2022 in terms of astrology and stuff, because we talk about it every month, but I did want to talk about some bigger things, and then we'll go into the card of the month, the earth medicine, which is the crystals, the plants, and the animals for this month that are going to help. And I'm really excited about the work that we're doing this month, because it is really exciting. So let's just start off 2022 knowing that we have Venus in retrograde in Capricorn. So that started on the 19th of December, and it's going to continue for the rest of January. So that's going to be kind of a big deal for us. And then Mercury goes retrograde on the 14th of January to February 3rd, which stinks because I'm traveling during that time. So that makes me nervous. But the Mercury in retrograde, right now we're in the Mercury shadow period. So you may start to notice some of that Mercury retrograde energy. So for the rest of the month, we have a new moon on the 2nd. And that's in Capricorn, and we have a full moon on the 17th in Cancer, and then we have another new moon in Aquarius on the 31st. Now, if you're on the East Coast, it is the 1st of February. If you're on the West Coast, it's on the 31st. A lot of people will use both dates then as new moon times. So it just really depends on where you are. So think of it I'll give you the time. The time is 12:46 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 1st. So that really is, for those on the Pacific, it's, 9:45. So 9:46, sorry. And that's going to be in Aquarius. So, for much of 2020 and 2021, Jupiter has been in Saturn-ruled signs. Those are Capricorn and Aquarius. So what does that mean? When we have a planet like Jupiter, which is known for abundance and good luck and, all kinds of joyful ease, in a sign that's known for restriction, we can see how that plays out. And you can see kind of how 2020 and 2021 came out with Jupiter in Capricorn and Aquarius at different times. So we're starting 2022 in a different feeling with Jupiter. Jupiter is in Pisces, which is one of its home signs. And Pisces is a water sign. It's flowing. So this will kind of feel more like expansion. I think we'll have more hope for things, for fulfillment of our intentions, for abundance. It'll definitely bring an ease. I feel like we can start to stretch our wings. We talk about Saturn is a sign of rules, of kind of like restriction and rejection sometimes. It kind of lives by order. And we've had a lot of chaos because we've had this Jupiter in Saturn. So Jupiter, which is a sign of, or a planet of expansion and abundance and, all the good, happy, joy stuff, it's in a sign of restriction and rule. So it is immediately attention, right? So 2020 started out with Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, the Sun, and Mercury all in Saturn. And then, 2022 had a Saturn, Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius. So we have had kind of a tightness for the past 2 years. Now, Saturn's still in Aquarius, and and what that really means is we're going to be dealing with the ramifications of the last 2 years. But I feel like more, this is really showing us that more abundance can come in, even more like financial abundance, fulfillment, happiness, ease, and relaxation. Because that was part of the issue too, is like, even though we were maybe off work and at home, was it relaxing? We were worried about a pandemic and we couldn't go out and it felt restrictive, right? So even the relaxation time felt restrictive. And that's something that we'll see an end of in 2022, I'm hoping, from this astrology. And I can't predict anything. But I do feel as though, just looking at the astrology, it feels a little more helpful. So let's talk about, Venus in retrograde in Capricorn. So we talked about it in December, but, Venus is the planet of relationships. And we really, are looking at this Venus in retrograde as a time to take stock of our relationships and what we want. It isn't necessarily a time that is like, oh, everything in your relationship's going to fall apart. It's that we're making decisions based on our relationships. What's working, what isn't working, who do we want in that inner circle and who do we not want? We carry a lot of wounds from past relationships, including with our parents, our siblings, and then moving on to our friendships and our committed relationships, or I should say our romantic relationships, because there's a lot of people who don't, practice that. But those, we know what that feels like, that intense intimacy relationships. I think of it that way. And we really want to think of Venus in retrograde as a time to take inventory of the shadow stuff that plays out in our relationships, and not project them necessarily, but understand what we need, and what we can get. I think you can think of the time of Venus in retrograde as almost as though you are like excavating or mining your past. So you're asked to kind of take a review of your relationships, especially like in terms of work, and your partnerships, so to speak. You're going to pay attention to the way there's power dynamics, remembering that Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So we're looking at those like rules and things like that. Does it work? Are your rules working in your relationship? And then we're, thinking of this time as a reconstructive time. So we can be, mining the deep depths of our soul and our brain, and then reconstructing the relationship to be more aligned with what we need. So it can be very cathartic during this time. I know it's really kind of nerve-wracking when Venus is in retrograde, because you're like, that's my relationship. You can think this happened, Venus in retrograde, at the end of 2013 and 2014. So you can kind of think about what was happening then. So that's always interesting. In January, we also have Mercury. It left Capricorn on January 1st, but it goes into Aquarius, and it goes retrograde on the 14th, I believe. We're in that shadow period right now. So, really this is a time, and, Capricorn is a place where, we are internal already. So this is a really good time to have these retrogrades coming up, because we can kind of review and be slow. So Venus and Mercury in retrograde gives us this kind of slow start to the year and to the month, where we can really review the year, the 2 years probably past, and move into what we really want for 2022. So Venus and Mercury are giving us kind of a permission slip to do internal work. And the new moon is a great time to do that. We're really looking at this new moon in Capricorn, and that's always fun. I love new moons in Capricorn, but that's because I'm a Capricorn, and we do have a lot of Capricorns that are part of our membership group. So I'm hoping you all can feel like you're in your home when you're in new moon. But also remember, the new moon's not a great time to be social. It's a great time to be internal. So I'll be talking more about the new moon in the new moon reading. So we're going to leave that for now and talk about the medicine that we have for the month. So I pulled a tarot card for January 2022, and I pulled an animal card, an herb card, and a couple crystals. So let's talk about our card of the month. So the card of the month is not going to be a happy card for most people to look at, because we're starting the year with the Ten of Swords. Okay, so the Ten of Swords is a card that's a little overkill. How do I put it? The swords are a difficult suit. More of the swords are challenge cards, meaning they present some kind of challenge. That's really because the Golden Dawn, the ones that kind of, well, I should say, they're I'm talking about the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So let me get my thoughts together, because when I explain this, it might be a little confusing. But Arthur Waite is the one who basically commissioned this deck from Pamela Coleman Smith, who they were both members of the Golden Dawn. And this is in the 19th century. So that's during the kind of spiritualist movement. And the Golden Dawn's an interesting group. So Pamela Coleman Smith is the first tarot artist to draw the pips, meaning the minor arcana, the ones with numbers and suits. And so this is the first time we really see this harshness with the Ten of Swords. Though it was always there. It was used to be called like the card of tears. But she's the one who illustrated this. So, I'm going to bounce around and just say that. And this deck, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, was published in 1901, I think. And so Rider is the publisher. Waite is the one who commissioned and wrote the book, which is a crazy book. And Smith is the one who illustrated it. And most of us as tarotists think Smith is like the unsung hero and the one that really should be credited for this deck. So let's talk about the swords first. So swords is the suit of air. And so why all the challenging cards here? Well, air kind of dominates the intellect and the mind. And there was an inherent suspicion with people who were so focused on the mind. Now you have to kind of think of the context the Golden Dawn has risen up in. They're a spiritual group that believes in pluralism, meaning they believe that there is many paths to God. They were also more Christian leaning. Okay. So, but they do believe there's wisdom in all of the religions, and they had a lot of connection with Kabbalist thinking and kind of esoteric metaphysical thinking. So that's why you see the tree of life everywhere, and you see a lot of Kabbalistic approaches, and you see Hebrew and a lot in the cards, and that's because the Golden Dawn used those Kabbalistic approaches to understanding. So that's why you have a lot of people who are studying Kabbalah and doing magic because they believed in magic as well. So they were magical practitioners. And Aleister Crowley was part of the Golden Dawn. I mean, they were all kind of in this same thing. Now, one of the interesting things about Pamela Colman Smith and Arthur Waite and their relationship was that Arthur Waite was higher up in the Golden Dawn than Pamela Colman Smith. So she wasn't allowed to know some of the things that she was asked to draw about. So she had to kind of construct it based on her understanding. So, okay, when we talk about the swords and the relationship with the Golden Dawn, God, this has gone long. I'm so sorry. What we're talking about is an inherent mistrust of the mind and an inherent belief in the, idea that you must trust in spirit, right? Trust in God or your higher power or the universe or whatever you want to say. They believe that spiritual people were going, if you trusted and put your belief in spirit, that you were going to get everything you need. And there was an inherent distrust in those who put their mind above spirit. So you can understand why the challenge cards are going to be the swords, because those were about the mind and also about, perception. And they believed that perception was always going to lead you astray because your perception of things is going to be wrong, right? Inherently, because we act out of wounds and all those things that we know now and have psychological understandings of now. So when you look at the swords from ace to 10, you see a development going, and it gets more and more suffering as the cards go on. The 8 is this woman in a jail of swords, and she is blindfolded, and she is like kind of created her own prison, and it's kind of like a martyr and victim kind of card. Then the 9 is kind of the insomnia, sleeplessness, anxiety card. So this guy is up at night worrying and anxious. The 10, on the other hand, is a guy on a battlefield with 10 swords in his back. There's it's completely black overhead, but on the horizon is, the sun is coming up, and he has his hands in the as above, so below position. So, part of what the 10 of swords is showing is betrayal, because the swords are all on his back. So he's been stabbed. So this is the energy we're working with in January. And I'm just going to tell you what the cards mean and what I think it means for us when we work with this card as an archetype, right? Or as, a guiding force. So, he's got all, you only really need one sword to kill somebody, right? But he has these 10 swords sticking out of his back. It really sort of indicates that people were stabbing him on purpose, like out of a vendetta or something like that. So that's part of the energy that most tarotists kind of feel. But there are quite a few tarotists that say this is the card of enlightenment. And I'll tell you why. Because they believe that the dawn is actually the representative of the golden dawn. So when your mind has finally, stabbed you completely in the back, the swords, you are now in this new place to accept spiritual help and spiritual focus. So that's what the 10, has come to mean for a lot of tarot readers. We always joke about this card, and if you've taken my tarot class, you probably heard this many times, but we always kind of joke, like, at least it's not raining, when we try to find something optimistic to say about this card, because it is really dark. There's blood, there's, just it's a lot. So when we see these 10 swords, a lot of people interpret this as, it in a physical way, can indicate back pain and the need to do like acupuncture or do some kind of healing, because each of the chakras are penetrated, right? But for me, I think that this is hitting, basically a card of hitting bottom. Like there's no further lower place to be. You just literally feel betrayed and done. You're dead. So when we have the death, I think this is like the death card of the minor arcana. So we have a lot of transition and transformation when we hit bottom, right? As Annie Lamott said, hitting bottom is the solid foundation I needed to build a new life. And so you have to think of the ways in which, in many ways, you've hit bottom. It can be with health, it can be with work, it can be with relationships or friendship, or whatever it is. That idea of hitting bottom is important, and because there is a rebirth and a transformation. So this is kind of on the background of what's happening in January 2022, is this idea that we're ready to rebuild. Okay, so this isn't going to happen. This is what's already been. You've already had the 10 swords in the back. Now you can think over the last 2 years what all those swords are. You can name them. This is John, this is Sally, this is, this is work, this is my boss. Whatever those swords are, we can name them. I can think of a couple things that got stabbed, and most of them are health related. So you can think of that too. Like once we hit bottom, now we have to rebirth. And what does that look like for 2022? How do you want to work with that? Because I think this is a great card for setting intentions of what you actually want to call in. And that's really powerful and beautiful too. So let's talk about, some of the earth medicine that can help with this time and with working with the 10 of Swords and our retrogrades and all of that stuff. So for our plant medicine of January 2022, pine came through, which is really apt for this time of year. At least in the northern hemisphere, we are in winter, and there isn't a ton of herbs and flowers and plants that are flowering right now. So pine is a really great ally for this time. It's protective. It's antiseptic, for example. It's great for, if you're trying to prevent getting ill, which we all are. But it's an important wood that we use in building. It's wonderful for syrups and liqueurs and all kinds of things. Obviously, we use it with cleaning because it has antiseptic properties. So the idea here is, pine is a wonderful ally for protecting the self, for keeping things that you want to keep. So when we often talk about releasing, we want to preserve certain things, and pine is a great ally for that. So we want to preserve the friendships and relationships that are working, And, pine is a great ally for that. So I've been burning actually a pine. I have this wonderful candle, and it's from Enchanted Realms, I believe that's what it's called, by Natalie Toma. She makes them, and it was a Yule one, and I didn't know I had an extra one, so when I found out, I was like, yay, and I've been burning it nonstop. So you can work with pine in that way, working with the essential oil of pine or fir. And certainly most of us have pines in our house right now for the, Yule season. So, when we're working with pine, I think it's wonderful to use pine cones or, represent that in some way on our altars. So let's talk about the crystals for the month. The first one I pulled is labradorite, which is usually a favorite of everyone. Now, this is labradorite. It's like a feldspar, and it has that really cool chatoyance, that flash. Now, with labradorite, we call it labradorescence. Because it's unique to labradorite. It flashes different colors. I have a wonderful piece that I recently bought that flashes pink and orange, and it is lovely. I think it's called orange flame labradorite. So you can find different flashes for labradorite, but labradorite is a wonderful stone, first of all, for the new moon and for shadow work, and it really helps bring light into anything that you're struggling with. It's a great stone for dream work, for dream work, for meditation, for journeying, any of those things. And you can place it right on the third eye. It can be used on any chakra because it flashes many colors. It is just a lovely stone for witches, spell makers, magic makers, all of us who kind of brujas and curanderas. It works good for all of us. So I think it's really a stone that most of us are familiar with because it is so lovely. Now, the next crystal that we're working with is rhodochrosite. Now, rhodochrosite is a stone in the heart. It's pink. It's lovely. It is the stone of self-love. Okay, so when you're working with learning how to love and accept the self, rhodochrosite's a wonderful ally. I use it also for grief, and I think with the 10 of Swords coming up, I would be remiss, and same with the Death card, to say like, oh, this is easy. Usually we've gone through hell and back when we get the 10 of Swords, and so you're kind of honoring this with rhodochrosite by, first of all, being self-compassionate. We're not being punished. We're being, we have to deal with the meaning of what happens to us. And a lot of us who were raised in traditional religious households, we have to contend with this idea of punish, like the God or the universe that punishes and rewards from good or bad behavior. So it's really important for us to kind of honor the fact that, we're healing our old wounds from that. Like whatever happens to us is not a punishment. It just happens to us. So that's what rhodochrosite comes in for that self-compassion. And the last stone is one that we worked with a lot in 2021. I think it came up 2 or 3 times, but related quartz is a great stone for transition. And again, a wonderful stone to represent the golden dawn, the new era, the rebirth that we're going through after the 10 of Swords. So an interesting month in terms of how these connect with the card of the month. Now, I pulled an interesting and exciting animal of the year. I'm kind of wondering if I'm going to work with this animal all year because my intention is for joy this year. So the otter comes in as our guide. Otters are playful. They kind of exude happiness and joy. There's actually otters everywhere except for Australia and Antarctica. So they are known all over the world, and they can be worked with all over the world. Otters have been around for 23 million years, which is exciting. And, people who interact with otter often note how playful and fun they are. And actually, a group of otters is called a romp, which I think is really interesting. But otters, clever, they're smart, They use tools to eat. They eat fish and marine life, but they have a really intricate communication system amongst themselves. So otter comes in to bring a lot of joy and happiness and really friendliness and kindness. So when we work with otter, we tend to work with them for the courage to do something we're afraid to do. So otter brings joy to those kind of things. There is a level of self-control and willpower that comes in with otter as well. They're just really playful. And I think that's kind of the energy we're going to work with in this month's shamanic journey, is the energy of joy and playfulness. And I think we're going to start in the water and see where it takes us. So I'm excited to be journeying with otter this month. So look up otter, see what you like. I will, again, like in your shamanic journey, I will do like a deep dive into the medicine of otter and talk about, how they live. And that'll be available in the next few days, definitely the first week of January. So I'm excited to be working with this great medicine for January 2022. And I hope you enjoyed receiving this information this way. Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening to Centered with me, Angie Yingst. If you'd like to send me a question or comment about this show or any shows, you can send them to Angie@themoonandstone.com.